Thanks for making the time and being here this morning. We really appreciate it. By way of context, we've got a number of folk from our management team here. And really what we want to share with you is a bit of a deeper dive into our agriculture business, which we will touch on a bit, but then a much deeper dive into what we do and how we go about making an impact in agriculture. And I think what you will see is that our business is a lot more than just traditional NPKs. Our business is a lot more than just ammonia and urea. And we will share with you, and James will do that towards the end, James and Johan, a lot of detail around our Agribio business and the business that we've been in for 30 years and the profound impact that that business makes across the globe. Am I going to change this thing? Here we go. Thanks. So I know Nerina's introduced everybody, but I'm going to do just say a few words about the folk in the room from the management team and give you an opportunity just to meet them. So most of you know me, you know Stefan. Some of you would have met Tian, who's our Chief Operating Officer. But today we're going to introduce you to Mandla Mpofu. Mandla, maybe you can stand up. Mandla's been with us over a year now, and he runs our agriculture business globally. So he's responsible for the local business, the business on the rest of the continent, and the business outside. And he will come up straight after me. I'd like to introduce you to Louis Stradum. Louis is most of you know is my right-hand man. He's our what we would call, you would have met Francois, who we call our chief engineer. Louis is our chief agronomist. So Louis' job is not just sales and marketing, but he also runs our tech business, which he's going to talk to you about. He runs all of our marketing, all of our sales in South Africa. He's the busiest man at the moment. Is that right, Louis? The busiest man at the moment, where there are shortages of fertilizer and everybody's fighting. So he walked in here and he said, please tell everybody that those tubs there at the back are very valuable, rare commodities. And Seelan, don't do this more than once every few years because we're not giving that away again. But Louis is our chief responsible for sales, marketing, Axiotech, all of our tech businesses, and he's going to share some very insightful thoughts with you. Been with our business a very long time and a big backbone in moving us from granules, dry chemicals to liquids and to all of the more fancier world-class products that we'll show you a little bit later. Then the wisest man in the room is Johan Heiser. Okay, I didn't see you there, Johan. Johan is responsible for our R&D and innovation, and I think everyone who reports to Johan is also a PhD or a double PhD or a triple PhD. So I feel really awkward there, Michael, when I'm standing with these guys. But Johan, thanks for being here as well. Johan will take us through some of our R&D, some of our innovations, talk to you about how we work with universities and organizations across the world. And then finally, you're going to meet James. We love James. James runs I'll tell you now why I say we love him, runs our Australian business. So he's the source where the humates and the kelps come from. And then he's responsible for Brazil and global distribution. So James has flown in from Australia. So whilst we love James in the business, we won't talk about rugby or cricket. We'll leave that to lunchtime over a cup of tea with Anthony and me and James and others later. So James will I think we'll try and visualize the plant because we couldn't take you to the plant. So you'll see a few pictures, you'll see a few diagrams and videos and thoughts around what we've got there in a little bit more detail. Thanks, James. And then finally, we've got a new recruit to our team helping us think about improving return on capital and capital allocation and M&A, which is Glenn Heinrich. Some of you might know him. Also a PhD, chemical engineering, and then CFA. And he will try and bring the bio-agri piece together a little bit, talk to you a little bit about valuations and how we think about the growth and how we're thinking about investing and taking that business forward. So that's the team. Thanks, Glenn. Just to contextualize the presentation, I think it's important for us all just to remind ourselves of our purpose. I think businesses that have a very profound, noble purpose are businesses that are successful in the long term. And it's important for us to remind you of that. Our business is ensuring food security. Our business is ensuring livelihoods. And I think when you see the amount of disruption, when you see the amount of force majeures, when you see the amount of supply chain issues that are happening in the market, we are reminded that we've got a very noble, a very responsible job to make sure food production and livelihoods are sustained. I think the third part of our purpose and our impact is the environment. And Nerina started there, that what we do, we must do safely. What we do, we must do on a sustainable basis. And you would have read yesterday or the day before, we publicized our reverse osmosis plant that will save 180 megaliters of water a year. Not only will it reduce and help us from a cost perspective, but it will also reduce the impact on utility providers. So whether that's Rand Water, whether that's Eskom, it will make their lives a little bit easy. And then thirdly, it will help with the environment and ensure a more sustainable way of doing business. So really our purpose is innovating to enhance life and together creating a greener future. I think you'll see a lot of that innovation just in our agriculture business this morning. Then just to contextualize where we are, we're not going to talk to you about Protea chemicals. We're not going to talk to you about Protea mining chemicals. And we're not going to talk to you about our explosives business. We're also not going to talk to you much about our manufacturing and our very capable, strong supply chain. We're just going to focus on agriculture. I think just bear in mind that this is one segment, this is one sleeve of what we do. There are other parts of our business that's less agriculture related. And obviously where we're going into is the second and third part. So this is a slide you've all seen. We're going into the second and third part to really talk in a little bit more detail around nutriology and what that's about, in a little bit more detail around our tech, our ag tech businesses, and how fascinating and how advanced our technologies are, and then finally into the Agribio space. And you'll have a great opportunity here for those of you who've seen this sort of detail around Oro Agri to compare that detail to what you're seeing today in our UMate scalp and microbial business.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for making time to come out today. As Silen has said, this is a very exciting day for us to share with you what we're doing in Omnia Agriculture, both locally, internationally, and what we see for this business going forward into the future. We promised you when we met last time, and we've talked to many of you, that we find this Agribio business quite exciting. It is the way to go. It is the electric cars of fertilizer, and that is the future. But that being said, it's critical for us to understand how it links to the current business as well. So we've got a very balanced portfolio as far as agriculture is concerned, in terms of what's happening now and what's going to happen going forward. As you have heard, we'll talk about nutrology, which is our model, which we've used globally quite successfully. And we pride ourselves at Omnia as being thought leaders in this space. And I'm going to share with you exactly how we've done that. Over a journey of spanning nearly 7 decades now, we've proven that we're sustainable, and we've done that by ensuring that we're always ahead of the curve. So that being said, I'm going to paint for you a map of where we are and how we intend to take this going forward. So it's important for us to always paint the picture of where we are in the world today. And we're in this business. Our purpose is to enhance life, and want to show that this is what we're facing in this globe today. We're facing a high level population growth. And as you can see, we expect to have 2 more billion of us by 2050. And the bulk of that will be within Africa, which is very, it's right here at home. We have other issues as well, such as climate change and ESG pressures. we're seeing climate change become more and more prevalent in our business. And we pride ourselves in saying that, we saw or we foresaw that this is going to be a problem for us way, way back before it was even fashionable. And we're seeing reduced crop yields across the globe, a decline in nutritional quality, and as well as, crops that can handle challenges from pests and so on and so forth. And we at Omnia pride ourselves in terms of ensuring that we have solutions that can help our farmers and in turn society in general in terms of dealing with this. On the flip side of it, this sector is also contributing to the challenge. And as you can see from that, we are responsible as a sector for nearly 30% of global GHG emissions, which is quite scary. And we're seeing that a third of our food is wasted every year, and mostly in very unfriendly, environmental friendly practice. So we're worried about that. All of this culminates in food security challenges. All right. And we are saying that we as Omnia see this as an opportunity for us to contribute to alleviating all of these challenges. And the plan is to go into a greener, more sustainable way of farming, and ensuring that we promote local food production, as well as ensuring that our farmers are able to contribute to alleviating these global challenges. Now, as Omnia, I think you know us as a South African company or a SADC company. That's where we began, and we're very proud of that. But we have now become or are becoming a global company. And we've seen our footprint grow across the entire globe into 12 countries where we've got a physical presence, but distribution in more than 40 countries across the globe. So we are seeing ourselves as a global player in this game. And we're proud of the fact that we're exporting these technologies across the globe. Moving a bit slowly. Now, the important thing is to share with you how are we doing this. We've got different markets, and these markets have different needs. And therefore, we align ourselves, to whatever the market requires in those places, thereby providing a balanced investor proposition across the globe. In South Africa, we've become a trusted brand for more than 7 decades, like I said. And we've done that by ensuring that we have thought leadership as far as the industry is concerned. And that's put us in good stead for the past 7 decades. We are now growing our value add portfolio into South Africa, and also, as you will see later from my colleagues, investing a lot in agtech to ensure that we remain ahead of the curve. In the rest of Africa, we've exported the same ideology into the continent, and we remain a prominent SADC player. Of course, in that environment, it's a very different landscape altogether. And we've ensured that whatever we learn from here, we can apply to that different environment. Globally, as you all know, and that's why we're here today, the trend there has become to go more biological. And therefore, Agribio has become the way of the future, especially in that environment. And you will see later, as James presents, he will share a bit about what we're doing there. We see this area as well as one that, we would want to grow there organically and inorganically. And we see this sector as being the sector of the future. We're seeing very good growth projections as far as that is concerned. And we're seeing the market, appreciating what we're doing in that space with our differentiated product. I think Silen mentioned as well that we won't talk a lot about the back end of the business, but it's important for us to share with you that we do this on the base of a very, very effective supply chain. Often we are told that we're a supply chain business, and to some extent, there's an element of truth in that. And we've proven that with our very optimized supply chain, we're able to have supply certainty across the globe, especially in difficult times that we're having now with COVID recently, and now with the Russia-Ukraine war, amidst other challenges across the world. And your supply chain puts you in good stead as far as that is concerned, as well as our manufacturing, which we've talked about in brief. But most importantly, we're doing this on a base that's sustainable. We're taking ESG very seriously, and we're taking R&D very seriously as well. And we'll share with you today as we go on what we're doing in those fields. Now, you've probably seen this model, if I can say it, for quite a while now. This model was introduced 2009, that's about 13 years ago, and we believe it was well ahead of its time. You can see all the pillars of it, and we believe arguably this is a unique proposition to the market, so it makes us different from everyone else. And there are quite a few pillars there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but over and above the products, our quality proposition is important. ESG comes in there, R&D, and the feet on the farm, which is agronomy, is quite critical to what we do. And a couple of other issues there, technology, investment relationships, which are very key for us. I was sharing with someone earlier on that we pride ourselves in Omnia in terms of being able to maintain long-term relationships, in fact, generational relationships. And we build loyalty with our clients that can last us through generations. So that's quite important. So Louis is quite passionate about nutrology, as we all are, and he's going to delve deeper into what happens with that model. But we believe that's our core differentiator, and we believe this model will take us into the future, not only in South Africa, but globally as well. Now, you heard Celine talking about, the multiple PhDs that we have here. At Omnia, we've taken time to invest in our most critical stakeholder, which is our staff. And we've ensured that we recruit and retain human capital that we believe can take us forward into the future. And as you'll see, we have lots of technical people that we believe are thought leaders in the industry, and they're going to showcase, a bit of what they do today. So you'll have a chance to interact with some of our great minds within Omnia. So this one is probably the most important slide, and it spells out for you where we are, where we come from, and where we're going as Omnia. So we've built our base, our platform over the past 7 decades by being what we are on the left. We've produced and distributed chemicals across the globe on a common AN value chain. We have been developing into agrochemicals, as you will see, and we believe we're leading the change in that journey from conventional chemicals to agrochemicals. Our advice has put us in good stead in the market, so our clients trust us in terms of us being able to deliver the correct advice for generations. And we'll share a bit more about how we do that in the next couple of presentations. Going forward, we would like to see ourselves as an agriculture solutions organization. So in other words, the interaction with our clients, the advice to our clients, the thought leadership, and being able to put our farmers in a place where they can be able to sustainably farm into the future is where we see ourselves. We're seeing this transition to agrochemicals, to Agribio, and we're going to talk a bit more about that today, in fact, a lot, and the R&D that is happening behind it. We've also developed other muscles, in our portfolio in terms of partnering, and you'll see who we're partnering with globally to ensure that we remain globally competitive. So we are seeing Omnia go into the future and be sustainable as a market leader in the change to green chemicals. Now, coming back to the investment side, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, from an investment portfolio management aspect, we promised the market that we would look at disciplined capital allocation. And we're having a couple of chats earlier. What are you doing with your capital? What's the plan going forward? We're being quite consistent as far as that is concerned. So there's 2 aspects. The first part is being able to deliver our promise to our clients, in terms of being able to ensure supply certainty and ensure that they're able to achieve their deliverables. But going forward, we'd like to grow this business. And the idea and the plan and the strategy is to grow it in a sector that we believe is sustainable into the future. And that will talk a bit more about the green element of Omnia. That growth strategy will obviously be underpinned by ESG, which we believe is quite critical for us. It's been critical for us for quite a few decades now. As I've said earlier, we believe that we'll be in the market leader as far as that transition is concerned. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Omnia is in good stead to lead the journey into the greener future. And I'd like to end by saying that the future for Omnia is bright, bright, bright green.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. For those of you I haven't seen, I must admit I'm very excited to talk to you about my middle name being Nutriology. But you must also bear with me, I'm a bit nervous because my typical audience has got two-tone khaki shirts, short pants, and fellies with a cap. Now, I was told I normally dress accordingly, and I was told to dress accordingly this morning. So this is very, very un-me. So please bear with me for that. I've got a big challenge today, and my wife always says to me, talk less because you confuse the people. And I'm really going to try to do that today. What I'm asking you is to also keep me honest. And what I call is the global Sammy roll. And if you haven't seen that, it's this, which says just go forward, carry on. You're getting boring, or it's too much detail. So please, if I get there, do that. Sealand will definitely do that. But let's kick off and see where we land. Okay. Quickly, what I'm going to try and do is take you through the whole production process of a farmer, a typical customer of ours, where he starts, let's say, from harvest to harvest. And that's the Nutriology model. That's what we do on a daily basis with our customers to take them forward, to enhance them, and introduce new technologies. So it's the customer challenge, the value of Nutriology, because obviously that's what it's about. And then an overview of the model, how we go about and what we do, the solutions. And I think I want to close off with 3 case studies, just to show you what we've seen, what has happened. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. And if there's anything, please stop me whenever you see fit. So from a producer's challenge perspective, this is what producers is putting up with. If you look at the graph, this is a graph showing South African yield production since 1937, where we produced a ton a hectare for many, many years. And what's happening as of late with new technologies, with new cultivars, new genetics, the growth in the average yield is growing exponentially. My folks as farmers, and we realized last year that if you don't keep up with the curve, you will not survive. And then I realized again that the Nutriology model is really valuable, because that's exactly what it does. And I will introduce you to that. Just this thing is really not nice. Next slide. Just to show you what's happening and what's the result of intervention in agriculture. This is a trial that's been done in England at Rothamsted. It kicked off in 1955. And if you look at the bottom line, that's wheat produced since 1955 with no intervention, nothing done. No fertilizer, no farmyard manure, no new genetics, and it stayed at 1 ton to the hectare up until last year. And if you look at the other graphs, this is what happened due to technology, intervention, new fertilizer practices, new technology applied, and you can see it went in a very short space of time to 12 tons to the hectare. And that's the challenge that farmers, because this is what their competition is doing. And our challenge from a Nutriology perspective is to keep them, or to assist them in doing that. Next slide. So just from an agronomic perspective, this is what we call genetic potential. This is what a crop can yield. And let's say that's 100 for the argument. But then what happens is there's stresses. Next slide, please. You get first stress being, let's talk our circumstances, drought, or pests, or diseases. And all of that reduces the potential. And you end up with the environmental potential. Now, just maybe from an interesting perspective, what's the world record on maize yield per hectare? Any guess? 33 tons per hectare. 33 tons per hectare of maize being done in the US. That's the environmental potential. That's not the genetic potential. South African's highest maize yield, down in Cradock, 24 tons to the hectare. And if you then look at the previous graph I showed you with a country average of 6.5 tons per hectare, it shows you the gap that there is to fill. Next slide, please. And that's what we try to do with the nutriology model. You've got the stresses, and with what we do and how we go about, with the biostimulants, especially these very interesting stuff that we're going to talk to about, is to increase the difference between the environmental potential that you will get and increasing that closer to the genetic potential. Now, everybody says to me, what's nutriology? Nutriology is a word that we came up with many years ago. Nutri being the short for nutrition, and ology is the study of nutrition. And obviously, we're going to push it a bit further than just nutrition, and I'll elaborate on that a bit later on. Thank you. Mandla, I showed you, this is the model. Ladies and gentlemen, if we get out of bed in the morning, not doing one of those 12, it's cheaper to stay in bed. And then someone asked me, but how is Seelan involved in agronomy? Seelan looks at the investment, and he looks at you, for instance, to enable us to bring agronomists to the farm. So all of us has a role to play. And again, I say to my people, or everybody in Omnia for that matter, if you don't do one of these, rather stay in bed. And this is not a thing that we do to our customers. This is the way that I engage with you. This is the way that we answer the phone. This is the quality of the display today, the quality of the product we deliver to you being the presentation. That's nutriology. It's actually our culture, it's the way we go about. Next slide, please. Many moons ago, when I started at Omnia, we did the traditional stuff. This is on the left. It's the barrel, and I forgot that very interesting word now, one of those slave, okay, whatever that is. We did that for many, many years. And that's actually a very interesting show of what we do. Nutrition focused, the shortest slate, whatever it's called, will determine how full you can fill that barrel up with water. From a yield perspective, is the one factor that's the least supplied will determine the yield. In this specific situation is water. In our country is water as well. So we can apply nitrogen and phosphorus as much as we like. But if that's not the least or the most limiting factor, the yield will not go up. You will just lose money by doing that. We've moved from there to a holistic approach. We don't stare at the ammonia-urea ratio every day because we've moved. We've went to a holistic approach. And the 4 elements that you see on the right hand is what I'm going to discuss with you going forward now. So we start with the soil. We add nutrition to that being the chemical side. At the bottom is the biological side, which is very, very exciting, and that's what we're busy with. And on the left-hand side is actually the plant. Now, I bring one of my customers with. Nerina was very upset with me, but it's to keep me honest and to keep me tying the line. So this customer is standing with his feet in soil. That's where we start. We fertilize the soil, which is the nutrition. Biologicals also in the soil. And then obviously on the left-hand side is the technology that I will introduce to you, where we actually look at the leaves. We look at the plant. We analyze the plant to understand what's the most limiting factor. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm sitting in front of the customer for the first time. We start with the soil physical mapping because the soil determines what the yield potential of any specific crop is. We go and we analyze per hectare what's the soil structure, what's the clay content, what's the water holding capacity, all the physical aspects of that particular soil. Next slide, please. What we do simultaneously, we look at the chemical side, the pH of the soil, what's the phosphorus content, what's the biological content for that matter, and we put all of that into maps, which is geospatial, GIS referenced, and the colors that you see there is different maps of the same field telling the agronomist what's happening there. And he knows exactly at what hectare what to apply. Next slide, please. We take yield maps from the farmer. all these latest machines that the farmers work actually gather the data as it goes about. So what you see on the outskirts there is 4 yield maps. We take that, we normalize that, and put it into one map, which is what we call a management zone. It just eases up the management of a particular field. That field, if I can look at it, is about 300 hectares. So that is the management zone. So now, if you look at the right top corner, it's the yield data from the harvester. It's the soil physical and chemical properties, and also the nutrition that's needed. Next slide, please. What we then do, and it becomes a bit technical, if I get the role, I know that I must move on. There's red, green, yellow, or there's red to green lines on the graph, and it's a cumulative probability of getting a specific yield. Now let's look at the left-hand side. A farmer can then say, next slide please, I want to take a 60% probability of getting a specific yield in the poor performing soils, which is the red line. Therefore, on those areas, I'm going to fertilize and to cultivate the land for a 2.1 ton to the hectare yield. And on the good performing soils, which is the right and green line, I'm going for 5.4 tons to the hectare. Next slide, please. Or I'm going to be less risky, and I'm going to give a flat rate of on the red side, the 1.5, and so it's a lower yield aim. Or he can be very bullish, next slide please, and say on the lower yielding soils, I'm going to be very conservative, but on the good yielding fields towards the right, I'm going for a very high potential yield. Now we know what the season looks like, what the farmer wants to do, what he's aiming for. And then we start the recommendation process from a fertilizer perspective. Next slide, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, from an ESG perspective, you're all well aware that we are an ammonium nitrate-based company. That's what we do, that's what we say, that's what we promote, and it's the right thing to do from a nitrogen source perspective. And what also tipped my mind is this specific slide. Now, if you look at different nitrogen sources on the impact thereof on the environment, on the left is ammonium nitrate, what we produce from ammonia. The bottom red is the impact on land use. Now, land use, you can see the different sources of urea has the same impact on land use. From a global warming perspective, ammonium nitrate has a lesser impact on the environment. Then you've got soil acidification, which is a humongous problem in our country. Soil acidification, different to the rest of the globe, is a problem, and we need to address that. But the impact of a nitrogen source like urea, you can see the difference. And then obviously eutrophication, which is a problem, especially in the Europes and the Asias of the world, which is coming to us, by the way. You can see the impact of urea. So this fits our ESG targets as well. Next slide, thank you. From an agronomic perspective, the impact of the biostimulants, which Johan and James will allude to, you can see the impact. You will have the slide. It's a lot of detail. I'm not going to go into that. But we see big differences. If you add only the K-humate, which James and them produce, if you add that to microbials, which is on the right-hand side, you see the difference in dry matter and root mass. The impact of this is enormous. Next slide, please. Yeah. So you will see the drum on the left, it says K. Unfortunately, they're full. I can't pick them up. It's K-humate, and in the bottles that you're welcome to take home, the black bottles there, that's K-humate as well. You can take it out, you can feel it, and you can see what it's like. We also take the K-humate, and we customize that for our local conditions. Because more often, ladies and gentlemen, people get a product overseas, they attach a good story to it, and they flog it in the local market, but it's not fit for purpose. I always say the smaller the bottle, the bigger the price, the higher the promise, and the bigger the disappointment. And unfortunately, that's the way we work. And that's why we spend millions of rands and thousands of hours in researching this. I visited James's place in 2001 for the first time, and we're still working in terms of R&D and developing and custom making this product. So you will see K-humate on the right. You will see Rhizovator. No, Rhizovator. Now, Celia, now I'm going to get that. Sorry, just go back one. Rhizovator is actually a K-humate differentiated product. We custom made that. The Rhizovator PC says Rhizovator permanent crops. So we use that on citrus and all the permanent crops. And at the bottom is foliar feeds. Middle bottom is Baxtem, very exciting product. It's a 5-strain microbial product which we have found in the US. And if you combine that, the right-hand graph there is a combination of K-humate or Rhizovator and Baxtem. And there you see the quadruple effect of adding biologicals to traditional NPK feeding. And I mean, if we can do that in South Africa, can you imagine what we can do in the rest of the globe from a food security perspective? And, you know, it fits again, sealant to our ESG targets and the like. This is so exciting. I'm sweating, but let's carry on to the next slide. No, it's full, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Seelan, we don't deliver empty promises. We make them full all the time. So, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I need to speed up a bit. This is the impact of different urea. Ladies and gentlemen, the way that we fill up the ammonium nitrate shortage in our country is to import urea. And that's the impact on yield on the different ammonium urea sources. On the left is urea, stock standard. Second, we saw a 20% increase using ammonium nitrate. Third is limestone ammonium nitrate, which we produce as well. And to the right hand is calcium nitrate, which we also produce ourselves. So the nitrate nitrogen is essential in having good yields with drought stress. And you see that was the drought stress trial that we did. Next slide, thank you. Now the crop is established. The crop is knee-high. Let's talk maize for ease of reference. Now we can start implementing our technology to look at the plant. So there's different ways that we monitor what we see on top of the soil. Because everybody just wants green plants, because green make us feel good. But we must understand if it's not green, why it's not green. And I'll show you a case study as well. So this is a very exciting product. We use the Sentinel-2 satellite, which is not the most detailed one, but it's fit for purpose in terms of what we want to do with that. We've written our own algorithms from the NDVI images that we get, where we measure leaf area index, moisture stress, photosynthetic activity, obviously plant vigor and NDVI, and early senescence, which is all indications of how good the plant feels, how good it grows, what's the yield potential. And to the right, you can see we put that also geospaced. And because we look over that over time, it tells us what's happening in the plant. And let's just take the top one, and I don't hope it's too small. Let me show here. So this is leaf area index from planting, and you can see the leaf area increases as the plant grows. In the the reproductive stage is flat, and then it's starting to die off. And the converse of that is early senescence. Senescence is dying off of leaves. You can see it's low, and then it picks up. And with that, we can determine what's happening in the plant with additional algorithms and additional products that we have. Next slide, please. The next is OmniSap, and I mean, you've heard the word many times. OmniSap is actually a blood test for plants. Now, there's two ways to analyze a leaf. You can take a leaf and you can burn it up into ash and analyze the ash. That gives you what happened in the plant 4 or 5 months ago, 3 months ago. And then you've already had the damage, if it's drought or nitrogen shortage, whatever the case may be. With OmniSap, we take the leaves, we get it to our labs within 24 hours, and we crush the leaves. We actually take the plant sap out of that. And we've got norms for every month or every week of the growing season, and we analyze the sap, and that gives us what's happening today in the plant. And then you can be proactive in terms of correcting a deficiency or something that's going wrong. And I'll show you a very interesting case study on that. Very interesting product. Last but not least, water, very scarce resource in our country, and we work very hard to assist farmers to irrigate correctly. If you under-irrigate, you lose money. If you over-irrigate, you pollute as a first, but you also lose money. We're working very hard in terms of irrigation. Next slide, thank you. So now all of that, and I think this could be quite interesting for analysts like yourselves. We've got the graphs. I've showed you the first time around what we aim for. As we monitor this crop throughout the growing season, obviously a maize farmer should sell his crop on suffix, making use of prices that's high or low or cover his risk or whatever the case may be. So a typical agronomist would get his aerial images, he would get his SAP analysis, he will get all the information that he has. Takes this graph and put it through a model that we have where we put the price of the produce, if for this instance is maize. And we would say to him, at a maize price of 2,500 Rand a ton, on your worst performing soils, the red line, you have got a 20% probability of breaking even. And then the customer can decide, I'm not going to do anything in the poor soils, but on the green soils, the high performing soils, I've got a 70% probability of getting a return of my additional investment. Now, the same graph at 2,600 Rand looks like this. Next slide. On 3,800 Rand, all of a sudden, he's got a 55% possibility of making money on his poor performing soils. And that's, again, not assisting the farmer only to be effective in terms of nutrients and biologics and all of that, but also to make sure that he gets a return on investment. We're not in for a quick win. We're there to keep the farmers on the land for us to do business with them for many years to come. And this is how we go about to also assist him. And ladies and gentlemen, with precision farming, we've reduced the hectares that our customers plant with up to 25% because the poor performing soils just don't make money. Okay, next slide, thank you. At the end of the day, the real test of what we've done is the harvest. And what you see at the bottom, the middle bottom, is our yield prediction in terms of what that specific field will yield. And on the right-hand side, it's the actual yield monitor of the farmer. And I think if you cast your eye on the green patches on the right-hand side and the green patches, there's a very close correlation in terms of predicting what the future would look like on that specific field. And I think you will agree with me if I can tell you as analysts what the future would look like. I mean, how nice would that be? Okay, so that's the whole process, from planting to harvest. I've got 7 minutes left, and there's 3 case studies I quickly want to show you. This was a very, very interesting case study. It happened this year, 2 years ago in the Western Cape. It was wheat, and we had our image from the satellite, and it showed a very low nutrient or nitrogen use efficiency. You can see all red. We went to the farmer and said to him, this is the case. He says, no, I don't believe you. I mean, what you're bringing here is small bottle stuff with high prices. And we convinced him to apply additional nitrogen, 60 kilograms of additional nitrogen in that long square left to the black line. Next slide, please. What we could see and where this comes from is one of the super 5 elements, which is the photosynthetic activity indicator. And you can see the flat line. I mean, that kink that you have there should not be there. Otherwise, the crop would have grown. We saw the flattening out of the photosynthetic activity, and we knew there was a problem. We convinced him to apply the nitrogen. Next slide, please. And this is what the next or the follow-up image looked like. And you can clearly see the green patch on the left-hand side. Next slide, please. This was the actual yield of that field. And there where we applied the 60 kilogram of nitrogen, the block yielded 6.8 tons to the hectare, and the rest of the field was 4.5. Now, it's an easy calc. At 5,000 or 7,000 Rand a ton of wheat, 60 kilograms of nitrogen is minuscule. But okay, next slide, let me. This is Omnia SAP. This happened this year. This was a farmer in the Bothaville area. Furnace says he's got a problem. He has planted maize. The stuff is yellow. It doesn't look nice. Applied additional nitrogen because that's what we do. Something goes yellow, we apply nitrogen. we took the aerial image and we saw there's a problem. But what the agronomist did is he did a SAP analysis. Just go to the next slide, please. And what you see from the SAP analysis, the top graphs is nitrogen. The one is ammonium, and the other one is nitrate. And you will see the blue graph is there's more than enough nitrate in that particular leaf. The ammonium is slightly less, but it's not critical. But what he saw is that the actual problem is calcium and magnesium. It's not nitrogen. But what the plant showed is the visual. The plant shows nitrogen. So what he did is he applied calcium and magnesium. Next slide, please. And this is what it looks like a month later. What's more interesting to this, next slide, please, and you can clearly see the difference. This is what we predicted the yield would be. We predicted the yield to be 17.64 tons. Remember, this is 2 to 3 months prior to him harvesting. Yield prediction. Next slide, please. This is the actual yield, and he harvested 17.2 tons. So we enabled him to take a position in terms of selling his crop at the time where he saw fit. Our biggest trouble with farmers now is they are forced to sell their produce. And normally they sell in the harvest period where there's an oversupply and prices is low, and he's just going down the spiral. But with this, he can't oversell, but he can make an informed decision. Okay, that's the second case study. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the summary and probably the second last slide. This is a farmer that's been busy with us for 37 years. And you will see on the top left, I say he's a fertilizer and a nutriology customer. For the first 25 years, he was a fertilizer customer. And if you cast your eye to the middle graph, the green is his yield, kilograms of maize per millimeter of water. What we measure here is water use efficiency. What does farmers in South Africa do? They take water, convert to maize or starch or protein, because water is our most limiting factor. The yield you will see is up and down. It's all over the show. The red line is water use efficiency. And you can see it's a flat line. Nothing happened. And you can also see the variability around the average. 12 years ago, we've started to introduce the whole concept of looking at the crop production holistically. And it's very easy to see that his water use efficiency went up 50%, from 8 kilograms per hectare of maize to 12 kilograms per hectare of maize. But also more importantly is the variability around the average, which gives sustainability, which gives longevity. Next slide, please. I'm convinced that this concept of what we have started can really feed the world. You cannot look at one component and think that's the silver bullet, and you will hear the silver bullet comment a bit later on as well. I'm convinced that this is the future, and if we can get this right, we will be even better. But I also have to be very honest today, that selling this technology and selling the images is a tough job. And I want to say, 20 years back, we started with the specialty range in our fertilizer, which is micronutrients, and all the non-NPK stuff. And people said, you're busy with stuff that doesn't matter. Today, 15 years later, that's a big portion of our business. And I can see this being the same in 5 years. Yesterday, I attended the Grain SA conference, and there's stats that in the US, the average farm age was, I can't remember, 71 or 72. That was 10 years ago. Today, the average farmer's age in the US is 63, I think. And Grain SA made the same comment, that in South Africa, the same is happening. Our farmer community is getting younger, because farming is getting sexy again. Farming is getting interesting with all the technology that's added. And in 10 to 15 years' time, if you haven't done this and you've started 5 years ago, you will be behind in the queue. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, before I start, I just need to say that, I really enjoyed applying my scientific knowledge of the brewing process and making something really special. And luckily, that's a similar situation that I have at Omnia. We generate knowledge, we apply it, we do innovation, and we make some really, really special products. So yeah, before I get sidetracked and follow a butterfly, let me go back to my presentation and talk to you about the theme for today, and that is Agribio. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what R&D is doing in this space, what some of our actions and projects that we have running to amplify the growth of Omnia through this projects. Thank you. So I'm going to do that. I'll give you a brief overview of the Agribio sector, just saying what do we mean when we speak about Agribio. I'll hopefully explain to you why R&D is essential, especially in this industry. I'm going to touch on some innovation projects that we're running currently in this sector, and then I'm going to step back a bit and just give you a view of how R&D is structured to be fit to support Omnia of the future. I'm going to touch on a couple of projects that we have that's in the pipeline, and hopefully I'll get some excitement from you as I'm excited about them. And also to end off with, I will say something about what we think is future trends in this Agribio sector. Thank you. So I think you will recognize this slide. I think Seelan and Stefan presented it in our last results session. But first of all, before we start here, I just want to say that Agribio, when we talk about Agribio, it means biostimulants in the agricultural sector. Now, biostimulants is a very broad term. It encompasses a lot of different products, and you'll see I've listed some of them there. And although I'm not going to be speaking about biopolymers, amino acids, or plant extracts, we do have projects that we're currently running that addresses them, but nothing commercial yet. So the presentation today, and I think James will touch on it in a lot more detail, is the products that we currently have in the market, that is biostimulants. Humic acids, fulvic acids, seaweed extract, and microbials. Thank you. So the next question then is, okay, so what is a biostimulant? I think the way that I think about it, and it might be easier for you to remember it in that sense, is that Louis touched a lot on nutrients, NPKs, microelements, macroelements. All of them has got some nutrient value to the plant. Now, biostimulants does not necessarily do that. It only stimulates some natural plant processes. And you'll see there, one of the aspects can be that it enhances nutrient use efficiency, and that is one of the things that make it very difficult to understand these products, is biostimulants can in an indirect way, make nutrients available for a plant to utilize. So the end result that you'll see in the plant that there's nutrient uptake. But the biostimulant itself did not contribute towards the nutrients. It played an indirect effect. And that's what makes it very difficult to understand the function of these products. Some other interesting things that these biostimulants can also do is it can improve your water use efficiency. In that sense, it can also do it in two ways. It can change the structure of the soil that allows the soil to retain more moisture, and in that sense, make more water available to the plant when there's a drought period. It can also stimulate some processes in the plant that make the plant to be more tolerant during stress periods. The other two that I just want to touch on is disease tolerance and stress tolerance. So you'll hear me say a little bit about that as well in the future, in the next couple of slides. So in a sense, that is what biostimulants are. So Agribio, biostimulants in the agricultural sector, and this is what biostimulants basically is. Thank you. Now the problem with this is that, Louis actually also alluded to it, is the people saw the potential of this type of a product, and everybody flooded the market. They flooded the market with these little bottles that they sell at high prices without understanding the function of it properly. It's not that it doesn't work, it can then be applied wrongly. So, and that led to a lot of confusion in the market. People were applying stuff and don't see the effects of it. They say, no, this is not working. But they did not understand the functionality of their products. So thank you. So what we at Omnia has been doing, I think Louis also alluded to that, is during the last 10, 15 years, we've always been very passionate about doing the proper science to fundamentally understand the function of our agribio products, our biostimulant products. That is the main reason Omnia is investing in this research. We need to understand what's the function. We need to understand what's a specific mode of action so that we can formulate optimum combinations of these biostimulant products. Because if you remember, biostimulants can be a whole host of different products. Now, how do you sell 17 different types of biostimulants? Everybody will just say, I've got a biostimulant, why do I need that one? You need to understand what it is doing so that you can correctly prescribe it to the customer, that he can correctly apply it. So at the end, we want to end up with a complementary, a synergistic functionality. It's not just complementary. So what I mean by that is 1 + 1 = 2. We don't want to do that. We want to do 1 + 1 = 3. We want to get the most out of what we're doing. So thank you. Okay, so how do we actually go about investigating this in the R&D department? I'm going to sketch to you that we're actually doing it on 3 different levels of understanding. Louis has touched on it on 2 of them, and I'm going to start with the basic phenotypical measurements. So that is where we measure the root mass, the shoot mass, and very valuable if you want to study nutrient uptake, that sort of thing. And it's very valuable for you to understand what the plant is actually doing. And as the products evolved, we need to go to a more advanced phenotypical measurement. And that's what we also alluded to when he spoke about our agri-tech, our remote sensing. So that's more advanced phenotypical measurements like photosynthetic and respiratory efficiencies. So all of these, both of these are very valuable. And this is where typically most companies stop. What we said is, no, we want to actually take it one step further. We want to understand what this plant is doing on a molecular level. So there's a technology that we stumbled upon. It's very new technology, about 20 years old. It was mainly first done on humans, but we applied it into the plant environment. And that's the study of metabolomics. Now, what it means is any living organism has got some genes that do some metabolic processes. Now, all that processes create metabolites. So by using very complicated and very expensive and very accurate instruments, we can get a landscape of how that metabolites look like and how they change over time. And by looking at that and using very sophisticated software, we can trace that landscape back to the metabolic processes that's actually happening in the plant. So we can now say our product is actually responsible for this plant to react in a way to prime itself to be resistant to drought stress. So when you know you're going to have a dry year, you add this biostimulant to the program, and that plants will be much more resistant towards the drought periods. But you need to understand what that functionality of your product is, and that's what we're doing with this. Thank you. All right, so now just stepping a little bit back on how do the R&D department actually look like. The first thing that I want to allude to is that the world is changing. I mean, the days of people gathering in a one building, all the people with the white coats in one lab, that's over. We need to go for a decentralized R&D model. Not only internationally, but I'm going to start within Omnia as well. Within the different business units, everybody can contribute towards some R&D project. It can be Louis' department that's got very competent people that wants to contribute in innovating in some of our projects. Now, how do you get that right? So first of all, internal alignment. So what we've done is we've actually started with a very competent OmniBio lab. So that's the crux of it. So now all the different people that can contribute, we need to combine them in some forum. And for that, we created the microbial and humate centers of excellence. It actually works very well, not only within different business units, but business units like Australia. So we've got a monthly meeting where we discuss with everybody that can contribute or wants to contribute towards some project that we're running in understanding humates. They can contribute. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. It works actually very well. So that's internal alignment for us. So what about external? We also, because during COVID and our recent financial crisis, we realized that to buy equipment and to set up competencies within one lab is very expensive, and sometimes you will duplicate it. So why don't you decentralize your R&D externally as well? So we approached a lot of universities, like Nerina said. We actually established the Omnia chair for microbial studies at the University of Johannesburg, headed up by very competent Dr. Fidel Tugizimana. He's actually the chair of the South African Metabolomics Society, very knowledgeable. We're very fortunate to have him on our side. So that's how we collaborate with universities. And of course, universities gets funded by governments. So you need to go that step further and approach the government agencies as well. We've got a very good relationship with the Departments of Science and Industry, and they are very passionate about taking universities to the next level and making them work on stuff that's actually commercially applicable. So that golden triangle of industry, government, university, we're doing that in South Africa. But it's also a worldwide trend. So in Australia, we're also doing it. In the UK, we're doing it. In Germany, we're doing it. So there's a couple of collaborations running where we actually collaborate with international governments. We also have some industry partners. When you do these type of projects with international universities, there's always another company. Now, without having to invent the wheel twice, you collaborate with them, and it's a win-win situation. So even industry partners is not off the table if there's a mutual, beneficial working relationship.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic to actually be in front of everyone face to face. I feel like I know so many in the room, but over a screen on doing Teams as Australia was locked away for what felt like an eternity during COVID. So it's a great honour and a privilege to be invited by Omnia and have everyone in the room just to have a chat to you today about Agribio, and then really to sort of give you, as Sealan said, a deep dive into what we're actually doing and what the Australian operations are doing and how we're contributing to the Omnia story in the Agribio space, and then how we're taking that into the international global market. And there's a couple of slides that will start with where hopefully Anthony will even expand on what Johan said about those countries that are, and we're actually doing some research in those countries on exactly what you alluded to. So I'll try to see if we can get this working. And forgive, look, I get a bit excited like Louis. I'm very passionate about this topic. I love talking about it. I love this business. If I'm going too fast or the Aussie accent starts getting a bit blurred and I'm not making sense, please stop me and slow me down. But I am very passionate about this, and hopefully it comes across and you get a good understanding of this business. Other way, here we go. There we go. Okay, so I'll give a bit of a brief overview, high-level overview of the market trends in Agribio, which hopefully sets the scene of why we're actually participating in that market, and what those market dynamics are. Then a deep dive into the Australian business, or Omnia Specialities Australia is how we're branded, and what that value proposition is, and give an explanation of some of the products that sit under what Louis and Jan have talked about under a biostimulant, and those are really specific of those products. And I'll talk about those products and then really finish around the commitment to R&D. And I was talking, I think, to Mike earlier about barriers to entry into this market. One of them is building a really strong R&D data set to stop the small bottle of snake oil coming to that market, because you can prove yours has an effect. And the work that Johan's touched on really emphasises what we're doing there to make a really strong offering. Thank you. There we go. Right, so market trends, very high level. We generally see it broken down into three different segments. It's biocontrol, biofertilizer, and what we're talking about today is biostimulant. And in that market, we're seeing very strong growth. It's coming off a low base against, it is fairly new in the sense of its journey, but it's double-digit growth on a compound basis. So it's a very fast-growing market, biostimulants. Okay, so it's a market we want to be in, and we've got an offering that says we should be in that market. So it's a great growth market. Yes, it's coming off a low base. I think this market will keep growing very strongly. I think we've just scratched the surface of this market, And I think, as we go through this presentation, hopefully show you why we've got such a good positioning in this fast-growing market. Okay, but the market is very fragmented. It is still very fragmented. For an example, say in the EU, there's still 200 to 250 small to medium enterprises operating under that biostimulant banner. So it is fragmented. Okay, there's a lot of people operating. Some very, very good companies and some very poor companies. There's a very large gamut of companies operating in this market. The thing is, we're starting to see now, and I put some brands up on the screen there. We're starting to see some consolidation in that market. Okay? Companies are starting to cotton on to call it a green revolution, but big companies, big multinational chemical companies are looking at these biostimulant companies saying, we want to be involved in this. Great growth. It's cleaner, greener chemistry. It's something we want to be involved with because the world's demanding it. And a couple of examples up here of some very, very strong companies like, say, Valagro, recently bought by Syngenta, a huge multinational chemical company, been swallowed up Valagro. Another one is Biotium, that's been bought recently. That's probably the most recent acquisition we've seen. That recently got snapped up by an investment group for a huge multiple, and Glenn will sort of touch on that later about why these sort of acquisitions are happening at such big numbers. Tradecorp's another great operator owned by Ravenza. So these really good brands are starting to be snapped up because everyone wants to be part of it. They're doing it for certain reasons. Yes, it's a growth market, but secondly, they want that cleaner, greener image, and they want that new chemistry. A lot of the traditional chemistry markets are only growing at 1 or 2%. Okay, so there's this green push to have these companies in the portfolio that add value, and the really good ones are these biostimulant companies. The stuff we're operating in. Probably touches, Anthony, a bit to your question before about why is this happening? Because there is a massive demand for healthier food, more food, but of course we have to do it with less water. There's less land available, and in certain countries like the Netherlands, like what we're seeing in New Zealand, less inputs. Okay, a lot of countries are regulating what nutrients can actually go out. Okay, therefore, how do you make that nutrient that's going out the most efficient it can be? Because you can't actually add more. You can't just keep pouring in and pee on in some of these countries. These are the building blocks of crops. I mean, it underpins everything. But there are countries starting to regulate that. So it's a very, very interesting space for us to be. But that's what's happening there. More food, healthier food. We've got to do it with less. More with less. And just to put it into context, I suppose, sort of, what we see every day in front of us, and we talk about water and nutrient use efficiency, particularly on water, the amount of water it takes to make certain protein groups and certain commodities. Every time there's a steak in front of you, close to 5,000 litres of water going into that. A chicken breast, 1,100 litres. Huge amounts of water required to make a lot of these commodities. Therefore, how do you make it the most efficient use of that, especially if there's going to be less of it? Same with nutrients. If you have to grow a crop and it's taking nutrients, how do you make that crop grow the best possible by using those nutrients? And then I suppose the drivers, it's really being driven by a consumer level we're seeing. So the consumers are demanding this, which of course being driven by consumers, the farmer is having to adopt. And Louis talked about some of his case studies where traditional farming groups and producers have had to change the way they operate through great advice, through the nutriology concept, because it's being driven at a consumer level. They have to change the way they do things. Because there's more stress, there are longer droughts, there's bigger floods, all of these sort of issues that we're facing as a grower, as a farmer, they're having to change the way they do things. Producing food all year round rather than just during a season. The markets demand it. You can transport, you can get food quicker to end markets. Therefore, growers are being pushed to keep growing all year round. So how can we help them? What's the protocol under the nutriology concept of helping them do this? And biostimulants is one way to assist. It's helping them reach that genetic potential by changing a few things, by helping nutrients get to that plant and make a better yield, a more healthier food. And then from a manufacturing point of view and a distribution point of view, which is where we come in, is how are we adapting to make sure we can meet that demand. It's the first mover effect. I'll touch on it a bit later, but we're in that space already. So you've got to have that first mover effect where you all seem to be doing it and growing it and producing products like this that in the end help that grower meet that market demand. Okay, so I think everyone knows where Australia is. Sometimes we forget where we are. I think we're sort of right down the bottom there, but where we're located in Victoria. That's where our plant is, okay, in the state of Victoria. And in Victoria, about an hour and a half out of the main city called Melbourne. And we're located in what's called the Gippsland Basin. And I'll touch on the next few slides while we're there. But there's a very strong story about why we're located in that area, why the plant is there. But we're in Victoria, state of Victoria, in a place called Morwell. Okay, this is the site. So the reason we're there is that we sit right on top of a very rich raw material source from what we extract humic acid from. And that's our value proposition. We make a very, very, very concentrated, world-class product. And we do it by using brown coal, or what they call lenodite. We extract it from that, and we sit right next to that reserve. We've got exclusive access to that reserve. No one else in Australia is doing that. There's lots of brown coal in Australia, but no one's got access to this resource, which is a very, very rich, pure raw material. So we've been doing it since about 1990. There was a company called HRL. Omnia came in about, I think, 2001 and took that business over because they saw the great research they were doing in making these biostimulants, these soil conditioners, this what we call K-humate. And we've been operating there since 1990, and we're the only company doing it. So it's fantastic. Lots of companies have tried to do it, but they can't get access to what we have. We've locked them out. We've got that raw material. And this raw material, as I say, brown coal, it's known to be a very high quality source of this humic acid. And as Johan touched on, humic acid is one element of that biostimulant wheel. And that's what we're focusing on. That's what the plant is set up for. And we're backed up under the nutriology concept. We're backed by agronomists. We've got plant physiologists. We're very spoilt. We've got PhD guys. It's a very, very strong scientific and agronomic team to, once we take this product, to get it out to the market. Next one, please. So the reason why, as I say, we've got this value proposition is because of where we extract this coal from. Because lots of people ask me the same question, but there's coal around the world, you can get coal anywhere, there's all sorts of different coal, Australia's got lots of brown coal. No, we get this layer here can be up to 1 metre, it can be 1 metre, it can be 4 metres. And literally we take this layer, after the geologists have done the core sampling, we'll identify why this is a good area to take from, and we get in there, and then underneath that, the power stations then take away the thermal coal for power. But no one else does this process in Australia. So it's a very, very rich, I won't get into the real sort of science of it all, instead of saying it's a very old deposit, but it's founded on fresh water, so it's very low in contaminants. It's not full of heavy metals like a lot of coals are. It's very pure. So that's why we get such a concentrated product out of it. And I'll just, if I can get it out here and not stuff up the technology. That's what it basically produces. It's a very thick, concentrated black biostimulant, humic acid. We call it black gold. Sealant certainly does, but we've got a long way to go. But it's a very, very, very strong and concentrated product. Yeah, Mike, you can. So you can make. If I go back, you can. Can you? Sorry. So you can make a form of humic acid from plant tissue, peat, lenodite, black coal. It's the quality. It's what's in it. It's the concentration. So yes, I could make a humic acid from black coal, but it might be 5 or 6%. Potassium humate. This is about 26%, probably the most concentrated on the market. I can make it from peat, but then I can't get the concentration. And if I go too deep, I can make a humic acid, but it's full of arsenic and cadmium and all the nasties. Okay, so the reason we take it from there is just because of the concentration, the purity of it. Okay. So it sort of puts it into context there. We take a seam there. You can see we excavate it from those pits there. We store it under cover, and then our plant there, we extract it. We can do, to put into context, we got to the capacity of the plant about 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago. We upgraded that capacity. Okay, so we went from 100% capacity, we could quadrupled the amount we could do, and now we've got to, this year we'll get to about 50% of that capacity sold. So we've got massive ability to upscale and sell that capacity. We can do it fairly cheaply from a capital investment point of view because the infrastructure's there, and we can just keep adding on almost like a modular setup. But we're at a very nice stage now. We've made the upgrades to the plant. We've got spare capacity we can start selling off. So, one of our big strategic pushes at the moment is to get that global distribution footprint going to be able to sell that capacity. But the plant is upscaled, ready to go, and it's quite easy for us to upscale because the infrastructure is there. We just refurbish and then add on. And the other thing too, which has been great in the business with the growth of it globally, and I'll show you a case study just now, is that the size of the output we're doing has really increased. So yes, we put in 20-litre drums, it's easy. We'll do 1,000-litre totes. That picture there in the bottom right there, we're now doing 25,000-litre bladders into the subcontinent and into Southeast Asia. So our customers are actually building huge storage tanks, and we're sending bulk loads in bladders, and they pump it straight in the storage tanks and then add it into their fertiliser production. Just a bit on the kelp too. Johan touched on it. We've developed a extraction method where we're taking a sustainable kelp, an Australian seaweed. It's called Australian bull kelp. It's a well-recognised biostimulant, extremely strong properties. We've got an offtake agreement with a company in Tasmania, and they're very, very strict licenses. Again, it helps us maintain a value proposition because not everyone can get access to that. So we've got an agreement with a company that holds a license to be able to sustainably harvest that seaweed. Through work with Johan and the R&D guys, we developed a proprietary extraction method where we kept a lot of the goodness, because you can actually destroy a lot of these products if you don't do the right extraction. If you use harsh chemicals, you can really bust it up too much. So we've developed this process where we keep all the goodies. We can actually add nutrients into it. And you can see that it's a brand new plant we've just done. It's been commissioned only in the last few months. It's only quite small as far as its production capacity compared to, say, the humic acid capacity. However, again, this has got quite a low investment cost to add on capacity as we need it. So we've got the actual extraction. We can just add on tanks to increase that capacity as the market allows. So we've got the humic acid. We've got really good upscale there. We've got the kelp plant now. We've got access to the raw material, and we can build that quickly. And so we've got these two very key, world-class biostimulants that now really act on that global scale. And just as a bit of a case study, we developed a product with an Indian company where they were looking to differentiate themselves in the market. They're an NPK producer, been around a long time. They were wanting to sort of not improve their fertiliser, but they wanted to differentiate it and make it more efficient and be able to go to their farming community and say, look, we've got something different than the traditional producers in that Indian market. So this was a 5-year project. We started in a lab. We sent them some product, bit of trial and error with their guys. We've got some very good tech minds that worked with their guys. And over the 5-year period, we started developing a relationship where they started coating their NPKs in their factory. As of this year, they've agreed to 100% of that output of their NPK plant is going to be 100%. They sell it under a Smart Tech brand, but that's our coating technology on their NPK, and they've committed this year to 100% of everything produced in that factory, which I think at a guess is around 800,000 tonne, is going to be coated with our blend of this, which is really exciting for us. That's the blueprint, the template that we're targeting is a model like that. So that brand now is sold all over India. If they build it, they're quite a big company. If they build another plant, the game would be to get that plant upscaled to be able to do exactly the same. And everything that goes in that bag is coated with our biostimulants. So this is just a quick video which probably explains what I talk about when I talk about coating technology. The brand's Ferticoat is how we put some things together through an R&D program to develop a really, really strong coating product, biostimulant coating product. And this is just a nice way, I think, of explaining what it does without me talking for 2 hours on the technical side of it.
Fertilisers. They're a modern miracle. For over 100 years, they've revolutionised agriculture and fed the world. But they're not perfect. In fact, every time you use them, only about 50% goes into your crops. The rest is lost. At Omnia Nutrology, we're working to fix this. Ferticoat is a unique combination of biostimulants, humates, fulvates, seaweeds, and coating polymers that combine to make a truly incredible product. Ferticoat reduces leaching, fixation, volatilization, and scorching when used with granular and liquid fertilisers. And in doing so, increases fertiliser efficiency. But how? Well, when you apply nitrogen and phosphorus-based fertilisers, the phosphate will often bind to the aluminium, iron and calcium in the soil, instead of being available to the roots of your crop. Ferticoat binds to these elements first, allowing all that phosphorus to stay available to the root system. After spreading urea-based fertiliser, up to 50% of the nitrogen can be lost to the atmosphere. Ferticoat reduces this, allowing the fertiliser to get to work on the plants, not the air. Getting more bang for your buck out of your fertiliser is great, but what this really means is that your crop will be getting more nitrogen, reducing leaf scorch, making for healthier plants, and this is the big bit, increasing your yield. Best of all, Ferticoat will work in any production system or blending facility. It even starts paying for itself before you put it on your crop by reducing dust in the blending process. Ferticoat will even help trace elements like zinc and copper stick to the fertiliser granule, meaning when you use Ferticoat, your plants are getting the fertiliser, biostimulant and trace elements, the best possible combination. Ferticoat contains the world's most concentrated humic acid, ensuring you have a healthier, more productive crop. From Omnia Nutrology, world leaders in biostimulant coatings.
So yeah, just a very sort of high level understanding of what we've managed to achieve by extracting such a highly concentrated humic acid, extracting a very strong kelp product and combining it to make a coating product that we hope and we plan to use that Indian example as a template of how to get that into that global market. I mean, we're already operating in 40 countries. We're lucky in the sense that we've got existing Omnia footprint and we're really well supported by the Omnia business. So we've got a fantastic network in Omnia Brazil. There's a Brazilian office there that is growing similar to our business, double-digit growth in their business, very, very strong margins. And Brazil is such a huge agronomic market. They've only scratched the surface there. So we're really excited about the growth potential in Brazil. We get really well supported by Louis' team in South Africa and the whole South African team, where we're seeing more and more of our products go into their, your Rhizovators and those sort of products where we're adding massive value. And Louis' team and his agronomists have been extremely supportive in us growing that offering. The Australian business, obviously, where we're based, is a very, very strong local business there. We're probably the key player when it comes to humates and seaweeds in that market. The US office, we've just started Omnia Incorporated in the US. That is going to be a trading business where we send the humic acid over to the US. That is an enormous market. I think everyone knows how big that market is. It's traditional, but we've got some key people on the ground that have come from competing companies that are now working for us and have got feet on the farm in there. So we're seeing some really good uptake in the US market. And we've got really big plans to grow that and really, really push some volumes into the US. The good thing about the US and Brazilian markets where we've got a presence is they're very accepting of this technology. They've been using it for a while, and there's a lot of players looking for a difference, okay? Our difference is the concentration. That's what we're pushing into those markets. As I touched on, we've got a fantastic partner in India. We've just developed a new one in Pakistan, so we're seeing some really good growth vectors going into the subcontinent. We've developed an existing customer in Vietnam, which is now our second biggest customer from an offtake point of view. That's happened over the last 2 years. So again, that Southeast Asian market is really growing. So we're pushing very hard there. And then we'll continue to sort of find new The European market is very regulatorial, which is great for us in the sense it knocks out a lot of that snake oil, what Johan touched on. They don't allow a lot of that stuff into that market. You have to prove what you've got in the bottle and on the label is going out on the farm, but it does create a barrier to entry. But we've set up an entity there. We're transferring registrations across to be able to operate in about 7 countries in the EU, new countries we're not operating in. So once we've got registrations there, that'll mean we can open up that market and find distribution partners there to be able to sell that product. So there's some really exciting global growth areas for us, both through the Omnia footprint, which is growing really well, plus new third-party and agent distribution for us. I suppose I really, really want to emphasise this, and Johan, has done such a magnificent job. If you can show what your products can do, and you can knock out this other stuff, because in a fragmented market where everyone's got a solution, everyone tries to sell a silver bullet. I think what we're doing is we're not selling the silver bullet. We're selling science, we're selling data, we're selling solutions. And I think that's the big difference when people say, well, hang on, there's humic acid all over the world. It's been around for a while. You know, there's Chinese copycat products at $1 a litre. You're a lot more expensive. It's because of this. We can prove what we're putting out and what we're, the raw material. And we've taken customers from all over the world to our site in Morwell, where they've touched the raw material, they see what we do, and they actually believe in what we do, and then we back it up with science and R&D on a global scale. So we're in over 30 countries now with proper, collaborators, universities, consultants doing the R&D work for us. And I think this is a huge part of why we're going to be successful, is because we can back it up. And the key to this is backing it up and knocking out the stuff that can't back up their claims. So this is really exciting, and I think we're doing a very, very good job, and we'll continue to do a really, really good job on this. And just to finish off, what's the fit for Omnia? So we've touched on the market, we've touched on why we're in that market, what do we do, why do we what we're doing, why is it so strong, why is our value proposition so good out of that business? I think we've, from a market that we're already in, we've got the ability, I think, to get into this, to grow our share in this market quickly, because we're in it. We're not trying to break into this global market. We're there. We've got an offering. We're building a product that goes into that nutriology toolbox that we can take all over the world. So we're in the market. The investment into that market can often be restrictive, depending on what you want to do. We've built and we've got plant that can be upscaled at a fairly cheap investment to bring capacity on as the demand goes. So we've got that ability to be able to meet demand as we drive it. And I think we've become a world leader in this. I'm absolutely certain that if we keep doing we stay the course, we'll be an absolute world leader in the biostimulant market. Again, if I can leave everyone in this room with one thing, this is not silver bullet stuff. This is key tools in a toolbox where we add solutions into a market that is now going the way we want it to do. They are demanding this. We're seeing the shifts in the market, and we're in that market. So, I'm very excited. Thanks for the opportunity. No doubt there's lots of questions. I'll move through it very quickly, I know. But it's fantastic to be able to present just a fraction, of what we're doing. But in the years to come, we have this opportunity again. I look forward to showing you all the growth in this business. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces. I think Nerina's introduction might be longer than my slides. I've only got 2 slides to take you through. I think my colleagues... Hopefully that works now. My colleagues have done an excellent job, so I think I'm just going to sum up some of the stuff for you. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about really is what Omnia likes about this business. I think it'll be obvious from what's been presented so far already. And then I'll just show you a little bit of what's been happening in the M&A space and what big corporates and private equity and global chemical companies have been seeing and doing in the sector. So if you can go to the next slide. So what do we like? It's clear from what Johan's shown and what James has shown that this is a growing market. Now, Omnia has been involved in the space for a long time. Arguably, we were ahead of the curve. But what's happened is the world's caught up. As nutrient use efficiency and water use efficiency have become front of mind to farmers and growers around the world, they're looking for solutions like this. So, as James showed, our products are of extremely high quality, and that's recognized by global clients around the world. Clients like Deepak and other clients in the US and all over recognize that our source material is a key differentiator, as well as our R&D that really backs this up. So how does that translate to the numbers, which is the part that gets us analysts most excited? You'll see, from our financials, we disclosed out Australia and Brazil separately in our agriculture division. You can see the margins are much higher than the rest of the business, and that's really because of the extremely high GPs that exist in this space. Now, that's not just us. If you look at other biological agri companies around the world, you'll see that their GP margins trade anywhere from 50 to 90% on products. And that's really because of the IP and the R&D that goes into those products. And really what that means is that you end up with excellent cash conversions, and these aren't CapEx hungry businesses either. So that really takes me straight to the next point, which James has already showed you our facility. We've already invested, we've doubled capacity or quadrupled capacity, and we're running only at 50% there. So we still have a lot of room to grow in our existing facilities, and to expand those further is not CapEx intensive. So that allows us a huge growth path without much CapEx to spend. And then lastly, we've got a team that's been doing this for a long time, that knows the market well, knows our customers well. James mentioned it. It takes a good 5 years at least to develop a relationship with a large customer who's willing to put this into their products. And that work's been going on in the background for a long time, and adoption's starting to happen now. So we're not the only ones who've realized this. If you can go into the next slide, please. There's been a lot of consolidation in this field. James has already alluded to some of the big ones, like Syngenta acquiring Valagro, but there's been a lot of these transactions lately. Sometimes, as James said, it's big agri acquiring smaller, greener businesses to try and change their own images and enter the space. In other cases, it's private equity, seeing the growth, seeing the cash conversion and the margins, basically coming along for the ride. And in other cases, it's diversified chemical companies where they see that they can get involved. These are just a list of some of the recent transactions. You will obviously recognize some of the names on those lists. And you can see that the multiples are certainly a lot punchier than in some of the conventional agri businesses. So the market sees the value in the space, and we see the value in our business. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to grow this thing as much as we can. So there's a long runway for growth organically. We're starting to penetrate new markets. We have only touched the surface of some of the existing markets that we're in. And we are very willing and able to invest on an expense-led strategy by increasing our distribution and the penetration in the markets that we're in, as well as a CapEx strategy where we will enable our plants to feed those new markets and through value-creating investment as we see it in the space. So it's a very exciting space. I'm glad we got to share it with you today. And with that, I'll hand over to Seelan to close the day.